For the first time in a couple of years, I went ahead and played through Chapter 1 of Final Fantasy VII Remake. So this game is coming out on Nintendo Switch 2. I played through the demo again, and I kind of have a lot of things to say about it. Because, this is the second time I've gone through the prologue. Previously, I bought the game on PC, played up to, I don't know, the end of Chapter 1, and then decided that, yeah, this game sucks, I'm not going to play it. And it's very self-evident as to why playing it for a second time. And I think I made a video about this the first time this happened, but, we need to remake this video because my opinion has not changed. Final Fantasy VII Remake has no reason to exist. It does not add anything new or interesting to the story of Final Fantasy VII. It is entirely some weird fanfiction-y bullshit that takes the original plot of the game and then adds things that, the developers thought would be cool or, cute or whatever, in the original, Jesse having a thing for Cloud was some downplayed thing that wasn't super obvious. And in the remake, every other line is oh, Cloud, I love you. You're so beautiful, Cloud. I want to have your babies. Every single line of dialogue. Before they attack the Mako reactor, she doesn't even know his name. So, when you look at, something like that, when you look at, some of the cringe voiceover work, especially Barrett's, some of the weird animations, and, just the weird pacing of it all, in the original, you go in, you get this set up, you get some, exposition, you attack the Mako reactor, you go to the boss fight, and then you leave, right? It has, a real impact, but in Final Fantasy VII, this entire ordeal takes, an hour, and it just feels very, 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 very unnecessary. It focuses so much on, Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse that it is very, very much impossible to really take it seriously because if you're familiar with the original, you know that these characters literally don't matter. And even if you play the remake with no understanding of what happens in the original game, you're going to notice, why exactly is Barrett in my party and Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge aren't? Where exactly are they during the boss fight? It doesn't even make any sense. But, the reason for that is that they're not part of the party. They are going to die before the end of the game. And it's just, it doesn't do a lot to kind of get you attached to them or to make you feel they're anything more than, side characters. It just, again, if they wanted to completely reinvent this game, expand all of these nothing burger characters into their own setting, and they just kind of completely failed because not only are the additions not enough to make the game more interesting or flesh out the setting more, the additions bogged down what made the game interesting to begin with. Because, the original game has you setting up the character of Cloud. You have, the post-party the party sequence where you have, you meet Tifa and, Barrett has to, you meet, Marlene for the first time. You talk about, you see what happens immediately after that. In the remake, it's, it takes so long to get to that point that, you start asking these very real questions, where is Tifa during this? I believe in the original, Tifa's not even brought up until you get back to Seventh Heaven, but, in this, it's she's brought up and mentioned several times, and it's just, who is Tifa? Why should I care about her? And it's just kind of, it's so frustrating whenever the game stops and tries to remind you of plot points from the original game, in the original, Cloud, not actually being a former soldier and being, some brainwashed lunatic is, one of the most amazing plot twists in any JRPG ever, right? A lot of people don't even realize that is the twist because it's so well executed and so well done. The Eris dying thing kind of overshadowed it. The game's actual twist kind of goes under the radar for a lot of people. In this one, Cloud's constantly getting headaches. He constantly doesn't know what he's doing. He constantly, doesn't recognize things he's supposed to know about. And it's you really see that the developers wanted to like foreshadow Cloud not being a soldier, and yet like they make it apparently obvious like right off the bat, to the point where like you honestly can't take it seriously. Like Cloud is like, he's kind of the anti-JRPG protagonist in a lot of ways, where like the game sets himself up to be this like really hardcore individual with this crazy background and backstory, but like, you know, eventually the player and the characters start figuring out that like everything he says and does isn't actually possible. That like you know, that Cloud is like completely insane. It's interesting how the game goes about this and how it depicts Cloud as being like completely out of his mind, and yet like you know, he still resolves to be like the JRPG protagonist anyway. You know, like he still has a lot of good heroic qualities to him. You know, like when he threw Sephiroth into the Mako reactor before the game even starts. Like that, things like that really demonstrate like good video game subversion. You know, like, you know, not the woke kind of subversion, but something that like straight up like subverts established industry cliches and trends, right? Like, you know, Final Fantasy VII is very, very good at that in a lot of different ways, but that's probably the most prominent. And the remake completely butchers that like immediately, and of course by the end they straight up say that like Cloud was never part of Soldier, even though that's not supposed to be something you figure out until like the end of disc 2 in the original. Like, it completely ruins the pacing of the plot, and just like the characterization of the original. Like, I just don't understand who this game was for, because it's not for hardcore fans, because we insisted that we wanted like a traditional turn-based RPG like the original, you know, and it's not for like new players, because like so much of this is based on the original. Like, you're gonna play this and not know anything about like who any of these characters are or care about them at all, and it's just, I just find it very difficult that anybody would play this and come away with like a feeling of thinking this is like cool or badass, or that like the characters are interesting, because they're just not. You know, not in this version at any rate. You know, we were talking about this when I was streaming it, but like, you know, it's remarkable how like half the cast of Final Fantasy VII are like completely worthless. You know, Cloud, Tifa, and Aeris are like goated characters, you know, all-time greats. But then you have like everyone else that like everyone just forgets about. You know, you have Sid, you have Barrett, you have Yuffie and Vincent, who are optional. You know, like it's like you could legit go through like the entire game, and I too tend to do this with just Cloud and Tifa and like one other random person, and that's your Final Fantasy VII playthrough. Like I feel like the remake just didn't really understand the appeal of the original game. Like, I feel like it misrepresents the characters. I feel like it doesn't get across Cloud's personality very well, because it does the same thing that like every post Final Fantasy 7 game does, where like it portrays him as being like very moody and like withdrawn, which is not the case at all. If you play like Final Fantasy 7, Cloud comes off as like pretty aggressive and you know, kind of a dork in a way. Like, you know, he's not like the way he's portrayed in Kingdom Hearts. Okay, like basically what happened, you know, they you know, Square fired all the people who worked on Final Fantasy 7. They made Kingdom Hearts. Originally, Vincent was going to be in the Coliseum, but they decided to use Cloud instead and put him in Vincent's outfit for some reason. They did that, and then, like, over time, like, Cloud just kind of became Vincent, which is just ridiculous, like, you know, because Cloud isn't a cuck, right? Like, that was, that's what happened, essentially, is that, like, because of, like, the way Dojins portrayed Cloud, because of, like, the fan culture around Final Fantasy VII, like, Square started catering to the, to, like, hardcore fans instead of, like, actually sticking with the original vision of the character. You know, the same can be true for Aeris actually, because how often was she portrayed as like fucking Final Fantasy Jesus, when in actuality she was like kind of a more normal, grounded person, like kind of a flirty girl. Like that's this is a really good example of like how Square Enix just has no idea, none, about like what Final Fantasy VII was supposed to be about, what the characters actually went through, what the story actually means. Like they just completely don't understand like the characters or the settings, and like they've just kind of created something that like panders to a very specific audience. The people who believe that Final Fantasy VII was like some huge major milestone on the PS1, and in doing so, they didn't really make anything that would like truly reinvigorate the brand and make it popular with like younger audiences. That's kind of my thinking looking at Final Fantasy VII R and playing it again, is that like I don't see anyone playing this unless they buy into the hype and think this is like some great masterpiece of a game. It's not. It has a ton of problems. It's not fun to play. It is very pretty. I do like the visual effects and the way the game looks, but like by and large, like I'm playing this and I'm just kind of like, we're still playing action RPGs from Square that don't play as well as the original Kingdom Hearts. Like I don't understand why the game wants you to just switch between characters and just go through these action RPG battles. Like it doesn't seem to work. Like when you play as Barret, all you do is kind of strafe and just shoot until you get like the charge shot off. It's like I would rather just play as Cloud with a more fleshed out moveset and then like I don't know, give commands to like the other characters when I want them to do things. It's like I don't understand like what they were thinking with this game. Like I don't understand like why they decided to just like go in this direction with it, because it just fundamentally doesn't work. Like I did that Scorpion boss, the tank thing. I did that, and I'm just kind of like, I was thinking like how much more impactful and intense like that fight is in the original. Like there's more strategy to it, there's more going on, it feels like you actually have to like think about what you're doing. Like it's just a better game in general. And like I do feel like we're kind of in this phase where we're kind of getting to the point where it's becoming more normalized to like turn-based games again. Because back in the 2000s when like JRPG, when like the industry was desperately trying to like downplay JRPGs, one of the things they said that like, oh, we hate turn-based, we hate cringe Japanese stuff, like we hate all this, and then like that led to Japanese developers putting out like more westernized video games to try and like appease these people. I do think it does need to be addressed, like how this was a mistake. I do think Final Fantasy VII, if it was going to bring in new fans, it really needed to stick with its traditional format. It needed to just be, it needed to stick with the original combat system, the original RPG mechanics. It needed to stick with the original script. Like, it didn't need to do this bloated thing. It is kind of my mindset on it. Like, honestly, like, I find myself, like, looking at this, and I would honestly rather go back and play the original again. Because the original has, like, a lot of artistic integrity to it. It has a great soundtrack. Oh, by the way, one of the good things about Final Fantasy VII Remake, it does use a lot of the same tracks as the original with, like, a full orchestra. Sounds amazing. But, yeah, anyway, Final Fantasy VII had, like, an amazing soundtrack, like, an amazing plot, like, great setting, like, great pacing. I just love Final Fantasy VII, like, great lore, honestly. Like, I love Final Fantasy VII. So, like, if you love Final Fantasy VII, if you're really into this series and, like, this game, like, you have to understand that, like, the remake just doesn't understand what made the original great. Like, it doesn't understand what made it impactful. It doesn't understand how to improve on it. Like, it's basically just a bunch of fan service for, like, 40-year-old fans who grew up playing the original. And that's something that we really do need to acknowledge, is that this game, this remake, has been a complete and total disaster.